Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu, and I've really got a fantastic guest today. Her name is Tracy Pleschourt. She's the founder and CEO of Self-Made You, and she's actually the co-host of the Tracy and Gracie Becoming podcast. So today's conversation is going to be all about filling the disastrous gap that our formal education system creates, sustainable change, all proactive initiatives, education, and I'm really happy to invite her to the show. So Tracy, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and so I like I said, I love agents of change, and I love just getting the conversation out there. There's a lot of work to be done today, so tell people your story, your background, and how you got started.
Yeah, well, so I'm a certified life coach who has kind of decided what areas I'm going to tackle based on what problems I suffered from. And so I spent 20 years in the advertising industry. It was a phenomenal career and not the typical path that you see most life coaches taking. But that path actually led to burnout. I found myself overeating. I found myself over drinking because I didn't know how to handle stress. I didn't know how to handle overwhelm. What that path also led to was a strong interest in mentoring other people. I found my love for mentoring people in that role. So when I kind of, surveyed all of the problems that I had going, I concluded that I was the common denominator and thought, what is it that I need to do that's more unconventional? And what that led me to was not looking for answers outside of myself, actually going within and utilizing myself as the solution to my problems, not thinking any longer that I was the common denominator to all my problems, that I was actually going to become the solution. And so I was using a life coach at the time who was helping me really understand my kind of thought patterns, that really helping me understand that my thought patterns were leading to the way I was feeling and my feelings were leading to the way I was behaving. So the overeating and the over drinking and the overspending and the procrastination was all being fueled by the way I was thinking. And all of a sudden it hit me. I'm like, how come I'm just learning about this now? That my thoughts are ultimately responsible for my results. And I quickly realized, I thought I was the common denominator to all my problems. And actually, it's only because I was never taught how to think in a way that created results that I actually wanted. I was taught in my formal educational system, I was taught what to think, to remember what to think. I was never taught how to think so that I could solve my own problems, so that I could achieve the goals and some of these impossible dreams that I had created. Nobody ever taught me how to think to get those kind of results. And so it became clear the gap that I was meant to fill, which was to create a formal educational process where people learn how to think. So Self-Made You was birthed from that need, understanding yourself, being able to rely on yourself to solve all your problems, to achieve all of your goals. And so we created a framework from which you operate from to get the results that you're looking for. So that's what people come to us for. And the applications of our framework is absolutely unlimited. We have people coming through our doors from every sort of background, every age, every socioeconomic, status. We have seen and heard it all. There isn't anything that we can't help you solve or achieve.
Yeah, I I hated high school. I loved undergrad, med school, grad school, and I hated residency. I hated the corporate world. And it's exactly your reason why. It's because it's just, I think school, I think I think you can learn more on YouTube and podcasts, but school it actually kind of provides an environment for socialization. That's kind of
Yeah.
the value of school. And, if they could improve the curriculum, upgrade it to the modern day, our kids would be that much better.
Right.
And so I love the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So kind of talk about sustainable change, and you talk about two critical components. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, so first off, you have to understand what it is that you want. So, in order to create lasting change, you have to first make a decision about what it is that you want and why. So, I think that those are questions that we often forget to ask ourselves. Like every single day, we wake up and we might recognize that feeling of anxiety that we wake up with, but it could actually be tempered if you asked yourself, what is it that I want and why do I want it? And then secondly, asking yourself, like, where am I in relationship to where it is that I want to be? So learning how to ask yourself those kind of questions, learning how to make those kind of decisions is critically important. It's not complex, but it's critically important to creating sustainable change. So if you're somebody who you find yourself overeating every single day, and then on top of that, beating yourself up for that kind of behavior, you need to slow down and ask yourself, like, what is it that I want? I maybe only want to, eat cookies only after dinner once or twice a week. That's a great decision. And you're going to feel a sense of self-confidence, sense of self-control when you actually make a decision. No matter, how monumental or how small that decision is, it creates a sense of self-control. And then the next step is asking yourself, like, what's going to stand in my way? What kind of obstacles am I going to come up against? Like, I might come up against the obstacle where, my children love to make cookies every single day when they come home from school. So I've just made a decision to only have them a couple days a week after dinner. And yet they're sitting there on the counter, like screaming my name every single day. That might be an obstacle. Right. And now you know what that obstacle is. And if you were to react to that obstacle, and often the obstacle is literally in your mind because it's a thought that creates an urge. When you have a realization, when you can recognize those thoughts and those urges, now you can avoid the self-sabotage that tends to happen. But if you don't slow down enough and recognize that process that's unfolding, you will just react. So we teach people to operate from one part of their brain that has you responding versus reacting. So you'll love this being a doctor. I talk a little bit about the neuroscience of your brain, where you take that organ that exists between your ears, and if you were to cut it right in half, you've got the primitive part that has you, often acting in a very reactive sort of way, kind of in a knee-jerk way. It has you acting very habitually. It's the part of our brain that's meant to keep you alive. And often when we react from dramatic thoughts that part of our brain creates, it doesn't end well. So we teach you how to operate from your prefrontal cortex, or what I like to call your prodigy brain. It's the more extraordinary part of your brain. And it has the ability to respond instead of react. It has the ability to pause. It has the ability to tap into inherent strengths that are only afforded to you through your prodigy brain, like empathy and discovery and innovation. So it's the difference between understanding, how it is that you are reacting right now, what it is that you want, and how to tap into that prodigy brain where you have access to empathy, discovery, and innovation, so that you can like perpetuate and further in a more of a faster way towards what it is that you really want.
Yeah, I love that. And we'll talk about mental fitness in a little bit later, but what's very interesting is these components of like diet, sleep. Recently I've been working with different techniques to like improve focus or memory, concentration, mood, all these different habits that you can do to make your optimal performance, your brain. So one thing is you talk about the responding versus reacting. And in this day and age when we're just kind of like, we're kind of dopamine monkeys, how do you create self-control fast?
Yeah. So you have to think of self-control more as a feeling and less of an action. Like, I know that so many people will say, oh, when it comes to chocolate, I have no self-control, kind of implying that they're very grabby, right? It's kind of this like urge that they are reacting to. And I want you to think of self-control more as a feeling, like a feeling of almost self-reliance. And so you now know that you always have a choice. When you rely on yourself, you always have a choice. It's the difference between thinking life is happening to you versus life is happening for you, right? You always have a choice. And so understanding that, being reactive comes from the part of your brain that has you operating on like autopilot, and operating from the intentional part of your brain, the prodigy part of your brain, actually takes intention. So you have to be actually mindful of where it is that you're at any given time and where it is that you want to be, so that you have this ability to switch between the unintentional and the intentional part of your brain. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. I love that. Just basically the pause, it could be a breath, it could be timeout, something that'll distance yourself from the in the moment emotions, that may cause you to do something rash or, something stupid or so once people understand that, you have this idea of self-control operating system, and and how can it be used professionally?
Yeah. So this is our framework that I mentioned earlier that has unlimited applications. So you can, of course, apply it to your professional life, big picture, but you could also laser focus into some of the smaller nuances of your professional life. So the framework is SELF. It's always relying on yourself, better understanding yourself, thinking of yourself as the solution. And these are ways that you tap into those inherent strengths. So the S is start with a decision. Where is it right now that you are at, and where is it that you want to be? So from a professional standpoint, maybe you're looking to kind of, land that next promotion. So you know very clearly where you want to be and where you're at right now. And you can also ask yourself, like, how do I feel about that? Am I feeling defeated? Am I feeling like this is an uphill battle? Do I feel like this is going to be easy? Like understanding how you're feeling about that. So you start with the decision. Then you go to eliminating the self-sabotage. Now, there are 10 very primary saboteur narratives that most of us listen to. The most universal is the judge, where we're judging ourselves very harshly. Like, you've never been able to climb the corporate ladder before, you're not going to be able to do it this time. Or maybe you're judging other people. Like, my boss gives all of the promotions to Joe and I never get a chance at him. Or maybe you're judging circumstances, like, I've never been afforded the skills to have this kind of, level at work. So the judge is very front and center of most of our lives. And knowing what that narrative sounds like gives you the upper hand. You can be on the lookout for it. You can understand how things unfold when you're listening and you're reacting to it. That's how you start to eliminate the self-sabotage that happens. Because when you listen to that narrative that says, I'm not qualified, and so I might as well not even try, guess what you do? You feel defeated and you quit. So it's obvious that that was a self-sabotaging pattern. But if you're recognizing it, if you're looking out for it, you can start to question it. So the S is starting with a decision. The E is eliminating that self-sabotaging pattern. The L is leveraging those prodigy brain strengths like empathy and discovery. You can actually question those saboteur narratives, like you're not good enough or you've never been able to achieve, the next level in the past. Like, question it. Is that even true? What about that is true? What about that isn't true? Questioning it usually reveals how dramatic those statements are, how quickly we believe them as the truth, and how easily we self-sabotage ourselves. So you look for the facts, you separate the facts from the story. You can only do that when you're leveraging your prodigy brain strengths. So there's 5 strengths that we teach you how to tap into. And then the fourth and final step is finish with a decision. So you finish with a decision of what is the next, like, concrete step I can take. Not what's the whole path. It's just what's the next step, so that you start to play in the sandbox of incremental, compounded progress, which never sabotages us. So this SELF, maybe that final decision is just to go talk to our boss and clarify what are the expectations, instead of, sitting back, listening to those saboteur narratives that say, he doesn't like me, he doesn't want to give it to me in the first place, and you go and throw in the towel. What's just the next concrete laser focused step that you can take with confidence? I like to say, what's the next step that you can take that's actually hard not to do? Make it so simple that it's hard not to do, because those are the compounded incremental steps that are going to get you to where it is that you want to be way faster. So SELF, start with a decision, eliminate the self-sabotage, leverage the strengths, finish with a decision. Applicable to your personal life, to your professional life, and absolutely anything in between. We like to apply it to relationships, healing relationships. We apply it to health and wellness. You name it, and it can be applied. It's very cyclical. Every step you take, you rely on yourself. It produces, it yields a better understanding of yourself.
Yeah. I really love that. And, one thing that stood out to me was this insight where it's like, if once you're in this position where you're ready to throw in the towel, you use this self method and you kind of, what is that next decision that you can take action, get leverage, and gain momentum, which is really interesting. So which actually brings us to the next question is, and I love this idea that you're describing Byron Katie as kind of question all of your beliefs. Like, is this true? Why is this true? Where's the facts? Is this kind of a story? Really question that. And then, so, once they use this self-control operating system, and now they can create a roadmap. So how can people create a roadmap to monetize their purpose?
Yeah. Well, so first off, it's decide what your purpose is. Like, what is it that really fills you up? Like, what is it that gets you up in the morning? Like, you have to make that decision. And it's so interesting how many people we have coming into the program who tell me, I don't know what my purpose is, or I don't know what I want. And I help them navigate that by looking at, what is it that you don't want? We can quickly conclude what is it that we want if we look at kind of all of our experiences that we've been sorting and sifting through and identifying what it is that we don't want. That makes it very easy to start that roadmap. And then again, the roadmap is always incremental steps. Like, we want to keep assessing, how far we've come, what worked, what didn't work, and what can I do different to be able to take the next step. The what can I do different informs that next step. So the roadmap is a little less of a clear picture, and the roadmap, it becomes more of like a confidence, like a handheld tool that creates confidence when you know that you don't have to know how this completely unfolds. You're not supposed to know how this completely unfolds. But when you have a sense of self-reliance and you have the methodology to work from, it starts to reveal itself quite clearly. And that roadmap is just, again, it's that next best step that you are making decisions, you're liking your reasons, and you're assessing along the way what worked, what didn't work, and what am I going to do different with the next step. So that's how the roadmap is formed, but it's often a roadmap that you actually see in retrospect and you build like in real time with confidence.
I love that. I love this idea where you're actually seeing things as they unfold, kind of breaking it down, small chunking it, which is really powerful because once they have a roadmap, but as always, there's potholes, there's detours, and so what are some of the most common obstacles to achieving your goals?
Well, it's always the self-sabotaging narratives. So, like I said, the judge is probably the most insidious and the most universal. But I would say second to that is the hyperachiever narrative that really says, like, if you can't do it perfect, it's probably not worth doing. It's that narrative has you dependent on constant performance and achievement for self-respect and self-validation, and you're really focused on like the external validation or the acceptance of others. So that's one of the biggest obstacles. I would also say people pleasing is another huge obstacle where you're indirectly trying to gain the acceptance and affection by helping or pleasing or rescuing or flattering other people. And then you end up feeling a ton of resentment from that. So the obstacles, in my point of view, tend to be up here in your mind. It's these narratives that you don't even realize you're listening to. And so we really spend time shining a light, getting you familiar with those narratives. And we actually have an assessment, a totally free assessment that will shine a light on which narratives you are living your life from so that you can be on the lookout for those narratives. But yeah, there's 10 of them. Like I said, the judge is probably the most universal, but avoider, if you're somebody that you tend to avoid, shy away from things that are hard. That's another big one that a lot of my clients can, relate to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite interesting because among physicians, kind of because we suffer a lot from people pleasing and kind of trying to conform to status, play status games, conform to society, manipulated a lot by guilt and shame. And what you're describing is a lot of it is just boundaries, like creating energy boundaries, not letting people manipulate you or use you or take advantage of you, saying no, and kind of controlling the self-talk.
Right.
Yeah, really interesting. So one thing is this is kind of how I want to end on this question is, why is mental fitness more important than physical fitness, and how can people contact you, reach out to you, check out your work, etc.?
Yeah, I think mental fitness or mental health should be front and center, should be the objective of our life because it leads to a much more abundant life. It has you more in the state of loving unconditionally, and that starts with yourself versus, fear and all of the unwanted feelings that, stem from fear. So mental fitness has you practicing. It's almost like lifting a weight in a gym, not unlike physical fitness. It takes reps. And so staying aware of how it is that you're feeling at any given moment. We work off of a daily planner where we make decisions ahead of time about how we want to feel and therefore what we would have to be believing to feel that way at any given hour of the day. But you can also look at it retrospectively. or you can go right into the now. How am I feeling right now? And really connect to that. That is a form of lifting a weight in the gym. That is strengthening your mental fitness because you're staying intentional. You're staying aware. You're not just living in autopilot, right? So mental fitness then, of course, results in everything that you want and keeps you living in a place of, taking responsibility for all of your results. So it's critically important in every aspect of your life. And we teach people how to stay intentional, and we start with the application of their day. We know that insight to anything, is only 20%. Everything that I've just told you is super valuable, but if you don't apply it, if you don't practice it, you are not going to create the sustainable change that you're looking for, because sustainable, long-lasting change comes from application. And so we are on podcasts all day long sharing this message of relying on yourself, how to create self-control, utilizing these 4 steps. But we also invite you to our free Coaching Friday sessions, to our master classes. These are all free, and it gives you an opportunity to apply the tool. Or if you're somebody who has been applying it, to come and really bounce your results off of a coach who can help you refine it. So you can find all of our offerings at www.self-made, M-A-D-E, and then the letter U.com. We will have a calendar there for all of the free Coaching Fridays and the master classes. On October 27th, we have a master class on how to plan your perfect day. And it keeps you in the driver's seat, being intentional about what it is that you want to create for yourself hour by hour, so that you create a day that is more than satisfying, that is enjoyable. And then that compounds into weeks, into years, into a lifetime of, decisions about how you want to live. So becoming self-made is an incremental process, and we teach you how to start with looking at the day, breaking it down into the hours, deciding ahead of time how you want to feel. So we invite you to come to that masterclass on October 27th.
Yeah. And, I love this. What you're describing is, the process, especially all these mental techniques, the Olympic athletes, the professional athletes, all the top CEOs, executives, they use what you're describing. And for all the audience out there, let's thank Tracy for coming on and describing how self-made you is filling the disastrous gap that our formal education system creates for our students, teaching them how to think for themselves, apply their concepts and knowledge, be intentional. And be sure to check out your masterclass as well. Those links will be in the show notes. And he's on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, as well as your website. These will all be in the links in the show notes. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.